Before the sun even hints at rising over the English countryside, the medieval village lies in a heavy darkness, thick and absolute. There are no lamps burning in windows, no distant hum of machinery, no glow from a nearby town, only the black, unbroken quiet of a world without artificial light. Yet the village is not dead. Something stirs beneath the surface. A dog shifts in its sleep. A horse stamps in its stall. A faint murmur comes from inside a cottage where a family sleeps close together for warmth. Inside one of those cottages, the hearth is little more than a smoldering lump beneath a blanket of gray ash. The fire has burned low through the night, tended carefully the evening before, so that at least a few glowing embers survive until morning. Those embers are precious. They are the spark from which the entire day will grow. Letting them die would mean starting the fire from scratch, a time-consuming and often frustrating task. So the first villager to wake crawls toward the hearth, still wrapped in a wool blanket, breath fogging in the cold air. She kneels and gently blows across the embers. Nothing moves at first. Then a faint red pulse glows beneath the ash. She adds dry twigs, leans in again, and breathes steadily until a tiny flame catches and begins licking upward. The room brightens just enough to reveal familiar shapes, the outline of a wooden bench, baskets woven from willow, a small chest holding clothing, and the straw-filled bed where her family lies bundled tightly together. The smell of smoke fills the room, comforting and grounding. This is the true center of the home, not just for warmth, but for light, cooking, and safety. The family begins to wake. The man stretches, already thinking ahead to the fields. The older children rub their eyes, shivering slightly in the chilly air. A chicken kept indoors for the night hops down from its perch, clucking softly. A few scraps of last night's pottage cling to the iron pot beside the fire. They will be reheated and eaten soon. There is no concept of breakfast as a leisurely meal, only food as fuel, something to quiet hunger long enough to begin the day's work. The villager pulls on rough wool clothing, garments that smell faintly of lanolin and smoke. Nothing is soft, nothing is lightweight. Everything is designed to last through hard use. Boots made of stiff leather are laced tightly. A hooded cloak hangs near the door for days when the wind bites especially hard. She steps outside, lifting the wooden latch and pushing the creaking door open into the pre-dawn air. Mist drapes itself across the village like a blanket. The green at the center of the settlement stretches out, dotted with grazing animals that were too stubborn to enter their pens the night before. The cottages encircle it irregularly, their thatched roofs beading with dew. A few thin threads of smoke rise from chimneys where other families have succeeded in reviving their fires. The stillness is so deep that even small sounds seem loud, the bleating of a sheep, the distant hoot of an owl, the crunch of frost beneath bare feet. There is no time to waste. The sun will rise soon, and daylight is the most valuable resource in the medieval world. Every hour counts. The man of the household shoulders a wooden tool, perhaps a hoe, perhaps a mattock, and walks toward the open fields beyond the village. His breath swirls in the cold air as he joins a line of men making the same silent journey. Farming governs everything. The survival of the entire community rests upon what happens in those fields. Women return indoors to begin the tasks that fill every corner of their day. Grain must be ground by hand between heavy stone querns, a laborious job that requires strength and steady rhythm. Water must be fetched from the communal well, carried back in wooden buckets that strain the arms. Bread dough must be kneaded and left near the fire to rise. Children must be fed and cleaned. Clothing must be mended, as every garment is expected to last years, not months. The pace is relentless, yet no one expects it to be otherwise. Children, Even very young ones have their roles. A 5-year-old might help gather kindling or scare birds from the garden. An 8-year-old may already work beside parents in the fields during busy seasons. Play exists, but it is woven into daily tasks, never a separate part of life. Their world is practical from the beginning. As the light grows, the outlines of the open fields become visible. Long strips of land stretch across the landscape, divided not by fences, but by custom and memory. Each family tends several strips scattered throughout the fields. It is a system designed to distribute good land and bad land evenly, ensuring that no single disaster ruins one family alone. Cooperation is embedded in the soil itself. Oxen pull wooden plows, reinforced with iron. They move slowly, their great bodies swaying with each step. The men guide them patiently, urging them with commands that the animals understand through years of repetition. The earth is rich and dark as it turns, clinging thickly to the plow. Birds swoop down eagerly, hunting worms uncovered by the fresh furrows. The men work in steady cadence, their breath syncing with the rhythm of the plow, their conversation drifting between weather forecasts, harvest predictions, disputes settled or unsettled in the manor court, and the lingering aches in their backs. Inside the village, the sounds intensify as more people wake. The blacksmith begins hammering iron into shape, sparks flying in bright bursts that briefly illuminate the doorway of his workshop. The carpenter checks wooden wheels and beams, measuring by sight and instinct. The miller prepares the water wheel that will grind villages' grain into flour. Grain he collects as payment, a fact that makes him both essential and quietly resented. The village is fully alive now. Smoke rises in columns, tools scrape, animals bleat, children shout. Life here is constant motion, constant noise, constant need. And all of this happens before the sun has fully risen above the hills. Mid-morning settles over the village, not with leisure, but with momentum. The early chill has softened, replaced by the brisk warmth of bodies in motion. Villagers have been awake for hours already, long enough that the pace feels steady, controlled, and familiar. This is the heart of the day, when labor becomes rhythm, when every task is part of a larger pattern woven into centuries of English rural life. In the fields, the men continue their work, guiding oxen through the soil with practiced coordination. The wooden plow handles are smooth from generations of hands gripping the same curves. The men's boots sink into the damp earth, their wool tunics growing heavier with sweat and soil. The work is repetitive, but it demands strength and attention. A misaligned plow can ruin a strip. A sick ox can delay a week of labor. And time is everything. If the soil isn't ready when the season demands, the harvest will suffer, and hunger is never far from the villager's imagination. Beyond the plowed fields lie fallow strips, resting for the year, dotted with grazing sheep that keep the weeds in check. Their soft bleating carries on the wind, mixing with the rhythmic creak of harnesses and wooden wheels. Close by, another group of villagers repairs hedgerows and ditches, boundaries essential for containing livestock and directing water. These borders are not symbolic. They are life-sustaining structures that protect crops and prevent catastrophe. Back in the village, the pulse of activity has reached full strength. The baker's oven radiates heat as coarse bread loaves bake inside. Flour dusts the baker's hair and clothing, giving him the look of a ghost emerging from the smoke. Bread is a staple of medieval life, consumed every day by every person. Without it, the community cannot survive. The baker works quickly, sliding wooden paddles into the deep stone oven, pulling out finished loaves and replacing them with raw dough shaped by the hands of women and children earlier that morning. Near the green, women sit outside their cottages spinning wool into yarn. The sound of the spindle whirling is soft but constant, an old melody known to every household. Wool is one of England's greatest resources, the backbone of its medieval economy. Even a poor family keeps a few sheep, valued not for meat, but for the fleece they provide. Spinning is portable work. It can be done while watching children, tending a pot, or chatting with neighbors. The spun yarn will later be woven into cloth, dyed with local plants, and sewn into garments that must endure for years. The air carries a mixture of smells: wood smoke, damp soil, fresh-cut timber, boiling herbs, and the unmistakable scent of livestock. Medieval villagers live with animals in a way modern people rarely experience. Pigs snuffle near the edges of cottages, rooting in the dirt for scraps. Chickens scatter in unpredictable zigzags across the paths, pecking at anything that glitters or moves. Cows low from the byre. Dogs bark at passing strangers, or at shadows, only they seem to notice. Props of village life stand everywhere: wooden buckets, tools leaning against walls, drying herbs hung from rafters, baskets filled with turnips or leeks, piles of firewood. The entire environment is utilized, nothing wasted, everything serving multiple purposes. This is a world free of excess, where every object earns its place through usefulness. Children weave through the activity like small, bright sparks of energy. They chase each other around the green, swing sticks like swords, herd geese toward the common pond, or shadow their parents in an attempt to be helpful. A few younger ones sit on the ground drawing shapes in the dirt with sticks, imitating the letters older siblings learned from the priest. Most will never master reading or writing, but imitation is part of childhood's brief window of freedom. The blacksmith's forge continues its steady roar. Inside, the smith's face is flushed from heat, sweat darkening the collar of his tunic. He hammers an iron bar, turning it into a tool head with precise blows. Sparks spray outward like fleeting stars. Iron is expensive, earning the smith respect, and often suspicion. Tools break, plowshares wear down, axes chip. Every repair passes through his hands. His livelihood is secure even when harvests fail. Not far away, the tanner labors in conditions far less romantic. Animal hides are soaked in vats filled with foul-smelling mixtures of urine, lime, and water. The air around his cottage is unpleasant at best, gag-inducing at worst. Yet leather is indispensable. Without it, there are no belts, no harnesses, no durable shoes. Discomfort is the tanner's constant companion, but so is necessity. His work, disliked though it may be, keeps the village functioning. Nearby, the carpenter uses an adze to smooth a beam of oak. His movements are methodical, carving long curls of wood that fall to the ground beside him. He repairs carts, builds stools and tables, fits doors, and constructs new cottages when families grow. Timber is the skeleton of the medieval village, and carpenters shape that skeleton piece by piece. Mid-morning begins to drift toward noon. Women tending small gardens pause to stretch their backs. Rows of cabbage, onions, peas, and beans occupy almost every scrap of open space behind the cottages. These gardens are essential to the household economy. Their produce fills pots, flavors stews, soothes illnesses, and keeps starvation at bay in lean times. The soil here is enriched with ash, manure, and scraps. Anything that can nourish the earth is returned to it. A medieval villager understands soil with a familiarity deeper than most modern farmers. A group of villagers gathers around a well, exchanging news as they pull up buckets. Conversation flows easily: who is ill, who quarreled with whom, who is planning a marriage, how many eggs the hens produced this week, what the priest spoke about last Sunday. Gossip is not idle entertainment. It is the social glue that keeps the village informed and interconnected. At the edge of the settlement, a shepherd checks his flock grazing in the meadow. Sheep wander lazily, their wool thick and in need of shearing come spring. The shepherd carries a staff, a small knife, and a sling for frightening off predators. Wolves are less common than they once were, but fear of them persists. Ancient habits linger long after threats diminish. Inside the cottages, the fires burn steadily. Pottage simmers in pots, vegetables and grains thickening into the same hearty meal eaten day after day. The smell of boiling leeks and barley drifts from doorways. Meals are predictable, but predictability is security. Hunger is a distant memory only when food is simple, reliable, and constantly tended. By now the sun stands high overhead, casting clear light across thatched roofs and dirt lanes. The village hums with synchronized activity, a complex choreography without a conductor. Every villager knows their role. Every task contributes to the survival of all. This is medieval life in its purest form, not glamorous, not dramatic, but steady, communal, and deeply bound to the cycles of nature. As noon passes into early afternoon, the medieval village continues its steady churn, driven not by the ticking of clocks, but by instinct, routine, and the demands of survival. This is the time of day when the sun is strongest, when shadows shrink beneath the feet of villagers moving briskly through tasks that must be completed before light fades. No one wastes daylight. The rhythm of work is unbroken, practiced, and deeply familiar. In the fields, men adjust their pace as the heat builds slightly, though even in summer it rarely becomes oppressive. England's weather favors cool breezes and mild temperatures, but unpredictability is its defining trait. A morning of sunshine can turn suddenly into a shower, and a clear day can hide the threat of frost. Every villager knows to watch the sky, not for beauty, but for warnings. A shift in wind direction, a cluster of darker clouds, a ring around the sun. These signs matter more than any conversation because food, security, and the entire future hinge on what the sky decides to deliver. The oxen continue dragging the plow in slow, steady lines across the strips of land. Their handlers guide them with firm, patient voices. Behind them, the soil rises in dark waves, each furrow another small victory against the ever-present possibility of famine. Villagers are intimately aware of hunger, not always as a daily reality, but as a frequent visitor in their memories. A single bad harvest could devastate the entire community. A single harsh winter could undo months of labor. These fears stay with them, shaping every decision, every effort, every whispered hope. Not far from the field's edge, men and boys repair the fencing around newly planted areas. Boundaries in the medieval world are fluid things defined less by property lines and more by shared agreements. Yet even shared land must be protected from wandering livestock. A single cow or pig could destroy a strip in minutes if not carefully supervised. The repairs are constant, the vigilance never-ending. In the village center, life pulses with equal intensity. Women move between the hearth and their various household tasks, stirring pots, kneading dough, rinsing clothes in large wooden tubs. The scent of lye soap mixes with the earthy smell of simmering vegetables. A child cries, and a mother instinctively scoops the little one up with practiced ease, continuing her chore with the child balanced on her hip. Every movement is purposeful. Multitasking isn't a modern invention, it's a medieval necessity. The cottages ring with different sounds, the scraping of a loom as a woman tightens threads, the rhythmic chopping of a knife against a wooden table, the bubbling hiss of broth spilling slightly over the lip of a pot. Even the silence between tasks carries its own weight, a silence filled with the soft hum of thought, the unspoken calculations of sustenance, how long the grain must last, how much wool to spin before winter, whether the pigs are gaining weight quickly enough. Outside, children play with boundless energy. They chase one another in circles, inventing games from sticks, stones, or whatever small treasures they find on the ground. But their play is woven through with echoes of adult responsibility. A group might pretend to herd geese, replicating the motions they've watched their parents perform. Another might build miniature cottages from mud and twigs, copying the architecture of their world. Even their imagination is tethered to daily life, shaped by what they see, hear, and experience every day. Older children help with real tasks. A boy may watch over his family's pigs, guiding them away from vegetable patches with shouts and gestures. A girl may carry a basket of wool to her grandmother or deliver a jug of ale to workers in the field. Childhood responsibility begins early, not as a burden, but as an initiation into the life they will lead. At the far edge of the green, the miller's wheel turns slowly, powered by a narrow stream diverted for the purpose. The creaking of the wheel and the rumble of grinding stones echo across the valley. Grain becomes flour here, though not without cost. The miller takes his portion as payment, a practice that often breeds resentment. Few professions straddle such a precarious line between necessity and suspicion. While the mill is essential for producing flour, it is also the place where villagers whisper complaints about unfair deductions or imagined cheating. Yet every household returns to him because there is no alternative. Mills are expensive to build and maintain, and only the Lord or the Church can afford them. Nearby, the reeve, the elected overseer of village matters, walks the edge of the fields, checking progress and ensuring that everyone fulfills their obligations. The reeve is both respected and sometimes grudgingly tolerated, for his job is to enforce fairness and report to the manor's steward. He is a villager himself, chosen yearly, which means he walks a delicate line between loyalty to neighbors and duty to the Lord. His presence reminds everyone of their place in the feudal hierarchy. The manor looms in the distance. Perhaps not a grand stone castle, those are rare in small villages, but more likely a large timber hall where the lord or his appointed steward oversees the estate. It is a symbol of authority. Its presence is constant. The relationship between villager and lord is rigid, structured, unavoidable. The villagers owe the lord labor, taxes, and loyalty in exchange for land and protection. It is a deeply rooted system that dictates the flow of their lives, even when the lord is absent for months at a time. Back among the cottages, neighbors exchange news, gossip, warnings, and friendly teasing. Medieval villages are tight-knit communities where privacy is scarce. Everyone knows who woke late, whose cow escaped, whose child misbehaved, whose marriage is strained, and who might be secretly meeting someone after dark. These conversations are not idle. They build alliances, diffuse tensions, and maintain the delicate fabric of community life. A traveling peddler passing through the village draws attention like a magnet. His pack carries wonders the villagers rarely see: iron needles, colored ribbons, salt, combs, mirrors, and even exotic spices for those who can afford them. He brings stories too, news of battles, royal decrees, famines in distant counties, strange customs from other villages. The children gather close, eyes wide. Adults listen with equal curiosity, though tempered by practicality. The peddler represents the world beyond the boundaries of their lives, a world both fascinating and foreign. As the afternoon progresses, the sun begins its slow descent, casting elongated shadows across the green. The day's momentum eases slightly. The villagers' bodies ache, but the work has gone well. Progress has been made. Survival has been nudged forward one more day. And in the medieval world, that is no small accomplishment. As afternoon begins its slow shift toward evening, the character of the medieval village subtly changes. The push of midday urgency recedes, replaced within each villager by the determined resolve to complete whatever tasks remain before daylight slips away. In a world ruled by the sun, the hours following noon are as precious as gold. Every moment counts. In the fields, the men turn their final furrows of the day. The oxen breathe heavily, sides rising and falling with deep, tired rhythm. Their broad hooves leave prints in the damp soil as they trudge forward, guided by the farmer's voice and the steady tug of reins fashioned from worn leather. The day's work has carved lines into the farmer's face, lines of exertion, of concentration, of long familiarity with the land beneath his feet. He wipes sweat and earth from his brow, looking briefly toward the village to gauge the position of the sun. There is still a little light left, but not enough for another full row. Nearby, workers gather bundles of firewood they cut earlier in the day, stacking it onto a handcart. Wood is life for the village, fuel for cooking, heating, and keeping away the night. A family's winter comfort depends on how much wood they gather during warmer months. Bundles are tied tightly with rope and lifted onto shoulders. The weight digs into skin and muscle, but the load must be carried. Wood is non-negotiable. Some men walk along the edges of the fields, repairing tools damaged by the strain of the day. A cracked handle, a loose iron shoe on the plow, a frayed harness strap, these minor defects can become disastrous if ignored. A broken plow at the wrong moment can ruin a season. Medieval villagers know the fragility of their equipment too well. Every tool is precious, every replacement is costly, care is survival. Young boys, who spent much of the day helping or observing, begin rounding up grazing animals. Sheep wander lazily in the meadow, nibbling on low grass. Goats bleat when prodded toward the village. A pair of cows ambles back toward the byre, unhurried, chewing methodically. The boys clap, whistle, or slap sticks against their palms to guide the animals home. These routines, learned young, will shape the rest of their lives. In the village, afternoon light bathes the cottages in warm, golden tones. Women lean into their final chores of the day. Some knead dough for bread to be baked in the communal oven tomorrow morning. Others scrub wooden bowls with sand as a natural abrasive, rinsing them with precious water carried carefully from the well. A pot simmers over the fire, thickening slowly into the evening pottage, a mixture of vegetables, grains, and sometimes a scrap of meat or bone for flavor. Smoke wafts from most chimneys by now. Everything in a medieval village smells of smoke: clothing, bedding, hair, walls, tools. Children are comforted by it, adults expect it, and no one questions its omnipresence. It is the scent of warmth and life. Children who spent the early afternoon playing in the dirt now tidy up small chores, guided by gentle nudges or stern looks from parents. A girl gathers eggs from the family's hens, checking carefully for cracks. A boy fills a wooden bucket with feed for the pigs. Younger children run barefoot along the green, their laughter chasing geese into a chaotic flurry of flapping wings. Their joy provides a brief counterpoint to the day's labor, a reminder that even in a world dominated by work, moments of innocence still flicker. The sound of the blacksmith's hammer begins to quiet. Inside his workshop, the forge glows a dull red rather than the fierce white heat of morning. The smith quenches a finished tool in a barrel of water, steam rising around his arms. He rolls his shoulders, easing the tension from muscles sore from hours of repetitive, powerful strikes. His work is never done, but he knows when the light is too low to safely continue. Metal demands precision, and precision requires sight. Elsewhere, the carpenter puts away his tools, brushing sawdust from his tunic. The smell of cut timber lingers in the air. He examines a beam he shaped earlier, checking its straightness with the practiced touch of someone who has worked with wood since childhood. If the Lord's steward requires repairs to the manor house, the carpenter will need to deliver perfect workmanship. Mistakes cost more than material. They cost reputation. On the outskirts of the village, a shepherd whistles sharply at his flock, gathering them into a closer formation. The sun's angle tells him wolves are unlikely tonight, but vigilance is constant. Shepherds develop a sense for danger that borders on instinct. Each sheep is counted by eye, their movements observed carefully. A limping animal, an unwillingness to graze, unusual stillness, these small signs can signal illness or injury that threatens survival. A peddler who arrived earlier in the day begins packing his goods, preparing to leave before dusk. Villagers approach him with a few coins or small bartered items, eggs, wool, dried herbs, hoping to acquire something rare: a bright ribbon, a comb, a small iron needle, a pinch of foreign spice. For many, this is their only chance to glimpse the wider world. The peddler shares stories as payment for their attention, rumors of unrest in distant shires, tales of a traveling troupe of entertainers, news of a noble's feast held miles away. His voice carries the excitement of movement, of roads stretching beyond the horizon, of things strangers to village life. Once he departs, the village will again feel enclosed, wrapped in its own routines. As the light continues fading, the reeve makes his final rounds. His job is to ensure that the day's tasks were completed fairly and that no corners were cut. He watches the workers prepare tools for storage, inspects sections of fencing, and reminds a young man of his required labor on the DeMason land tomorrow. The reeve's authority comes from the community. He is elected by them. But his responsibility is to the Lord. This dual loyalty is both a burden and an honor, and it shapes his interactions with everyone. Now, the village begins transitioning from work to rest. The sun dips lower, brushing the tops of trees with gold before slipping behind them. A rooster crows out of confusion, fooled by the shifting light. Windows glow faintly from fire-lit interiors. Adults gather their children from the green, calling them inside with promises of warmth or threats of consequences depending on temperament. Inside one cottage, the fire crackles loudly as a pot is moved closer to the hottest coals. The mother tastes the pottage with a wooden ladle. Needs more salt, she decides, a precious commodity used sparingly. She adds a pinch anyway. The family worked hard today. They need strength for tomorrow. The father settles on a bench near the hearth, undoing the leather laces of his boots. His feet ache, his back feels tight, his hands are still dark with soil, but there is comfort in these sensations. They are proof of usefulness, proof of survival. Outside, the sky deepens from gold to a dusky blue. Bats flutter overhead. The shadows lengthen, then merge into one. Night approaches quickly in the medieval world, and with it, everything changes. As daylight drains from the medieval village, the atmosphere transforms. Work may have slowed, but the senses heighten. The medieval world does not go quietly into the night. Night is a presence, a force, an unease that people acknowledge even if they don't discuss it openly. There is comfort in the firelight spilling from cottage doors, yet beyond those warm pockets lies a vast uncertainty, one that villagers have learned to respect. The last animals are guided into their pens. The gates are latched with wooden bars. Pigs snort as they are prodded into shelters filled with straw. Goats settle near the back wall, chewing lazily. A cow bellows once before lowering itself heavily to the ground. A young boy checks each latch twice, his mother's insistence. A loose animal could mean a ruined garden by morning or an encounter with predators lurking at the edge of the forest. Even if wolves have become rare, their memory remains alive in the stories told beside winter fires. As the final streaks of daylight fade, smoke rises steadily from chimneys across the village. Each column of smoke tells the same story: warmth, food, family, and the slow unwinding of the day's tension. The scent of wood fire hangs in the cold air, mingling with the earthy smell of damp soil and livestock. Medieval people know these smells intimately, for they never leave them. They are printed into clothing, absorbed into skin, woven into hair. They are the signature scents of a life built close to the earth. Inside a cottage, the family gathers around the hearth. The fire crackles, sending shadows dancing across the walls. Children sit close to the warmth, cheeks flushed red from the heat. The mother ladles pottage into wooden bowls, thick, steaming, fragrant with leeks, onions, and barley. A bone from last week's slaughter gives it flavor, though no meat remains. The father breaks bread into the bowls, letting the pieces soften before scooping them up with a wooden spoon. Dinner is not quiet, but it is calm. The family shares the small stories of the day: a fox spotted at the edge of the woods, a plough-stone that nearly broke, a hen that laid 2 eggs instead of 1. These small victories and concerns weave together the fabric of medieval life. They are immediate, practical, shared with genuine interest. After eating, the bowls are rinsed with a small amount of water and wiped with cloths that have seen years of service. The pot is moved away from the fire but left warm. Pottage rarely goes to waste. It will be warmed again in the morning, thickened, expanded, and eaten once more. Now comes the longest stretch of the evening, the time when the family slows down, but the world outside seems to pulse with life. The mother sits near the fire, spinning wool into yarn. Her fingers move with practiced ease, pulling, twisting, releasing, repeating. The spindle whirls steadily. It is a calming ritual, one mirrored in countless cottages across the country. The father inspects a tool handle he has been carving in spare moments over the past week. The shape is nearly right. Only a few rough edges remain. A better handle means a safer, more effective tool tomorrow. Medieval life is a long chain of maintenance, fixing, reinforcing, preparing. Almost nothing is disposable. Everything is renewed until it can be renewed no more. The children play with simple toys: a wooden horse carved by their father, a rag doll their mother stitched together, or painted pebbles used in counting games. Their laughter fills the house, mixing with the crackle of the fire. Childhood here is brief, but moments like this, safe, warm, connected, are treasured more than the children themselves may realize. Outside, the village green is nearly empty now. Only a few late returners walk quickly toward their doors, cloaks pulled tight, breath visible in the darkening air. Their voices lower instinctively, as if speaking too loudly might attract unwanted attention from the night. A dog barks once, sharply, at something unseen. Another answers in the distance. Then silence returns. Medieval villagers do not fear the night without reason. Darkness hides dangers that daylight keeps at bay. Thieves sometimes roam between settlements. Strange travelers occasionally wander into villages uninvited. Wild animals lurk near forests, and beyond physical dangers lies the realm of superstition: spirits, demons, wandering souls. These beliefs are not dismissed as fantasy. They are woven deeply into the cultural understanding of the world. The unknown is not simply unknown, it is inhabited. Within the cottage, the fire becomes the center of existence. It is the only source of light, casting a warm glow that reaches only so far. The edges of the room fade into shadow, creating pockets of darkness where the imagination might wander. A child glances nervously toward one of these corners, unsure if the shifting shadow is just smoke or something else. The mother notices and places a comforting hand on the child's back. The villagers pass time with stories. Some are humorous tales passed through generations. Others are cautionary or moralizing, stories of greedy men punished for their ways, of saints performing miracles, of strange lights seen in the woods. Then come the darker tales, often spoken when the children pretend not to be listening, stories of night spirits, ghostly travelers, or creatures rumored to steal away lone wanderers. These stories do more than entertain. They reinforce values, warn against danger, strengthen bonds, and preserve collective memory. They explain the world in ways that religion sometimes cannot. They give shape to fear, allowing villagers to understand and accept the limits of their world. The village quiets further as night deepens. The priest likely sits in his small home near the church, preparing notes for Sunday's sermon or praying by candlelight. The manor steward, if present, writes accounts of labor and dues owed to the Lord. A few cottages remain lively, new parents tending to restless infants, neighbors visiting briefly, young people whispering near doorways, reluctant to part. But soon, even these last threads of activity begin to fade. Firelight glows behind shutters. The sounds of daily labor, axes chopping, livestock bleating, tools clanking, are replaced by wind brushing through thatch, the occasional hoot of an owl, the rustling of a small animal near the hedgerow. Inside the cottage, the family prepares for sleep. The fire is banked carefully under ash to preserve its life until morning. Straw bedding is fluffed. Blankets are arranged. Children settle close together for warmth. The parents lie down beside them, the day's aches settling into their bones. The house creaks softly as the temperature drops. A hen shifts somewhere near the foot of the bed. The last glow of the fire fades to embers. In the medieval world, night is not simply the end of the day. It is its own realm, holding equal weight, equal danger, equal significance. And yet, despite the fears, villagers drift into sleep, trusting that the walls around them, the fire beside them, the family near them, and the faith within them will carry them safely through until dawn. Night in a medieval English village is not merely an absence of light, it is a presence, thick and unmistakable. It settles over the land with a weight that everyone feels, a reminder that humans are small creatures in a vast, ancient world. The fire inside each cottage becomes not only a source of warmth, but a beacon of safety. Beyond its glow, the darkness is complete, stretching to the forest edge and beyond, swallowing the familiar lanes and transforming them into something foreign. As the village sleeps, the air grows colder. Without insulation, cottages surrender quickly to the night chill. Families huddle together on wide straw beds, the coarse wool blankets pulled to their chins. The faint crackle of buried embers serves as the only sign that the hearth lives on. In homes where the fire has died entirely, the cold bites harder. Breath fogs in the air, and blankets feel thin against the creeping frost. Outside, a dog lifts its head and growls quietly before settling again. The sound carries through still air, echoing faintly between the cottages. A horseshoe hangs on a doorway as protection, a charm meant to ward off wandering spirits. A few families have placed sprigs of rowan above their thresholds, believing the tree's bright red berries hold protective power. In the medieval mind, the world of the supernatural is never far, and night is when its influence feels closest. Yet, despite the fear and mystery, life continues. At the edge of the village, a shepherd's dog barks sharply, waking the young man asleep in the small hut by the fold. He rises quickly, instinct overriding exhaustion. A stray sheep has nudged against the fencing, perhaps startled by a fox or simply restless. He checks the flock, whispering calming words as he runs his hand over their woolly backs. The animals are the lifeblood of his family. A lost sheep is a real blow, so vigilance is essential. Back in the village, an elderly woman wakes, not from noise but from pain. Her joints stiffen in the cold, and only by slow, deliberate movement can she sit upright. She stirs the embers carefully, coaxing a bit of warmth back into the cottage. A small cup of warmed ale helps loosen her muscles. She has lived through more winters than most survive. Her knowledge of herbs and remedies is sought by many, and she knows the sounds of the night better than anyone. She listens now, the wind, the faint shuffle of animals, the groan of settling timbers. Nothing unusual. She lies back down, knowing dawn is not far. While most villagers sleep, the manor steward might sit awake in his quieter, larger home, writing accounts by candlelight. His work is administrative: tallies of grain harvested, livestock counted, debts owed, fines collected from villagers who broke the manor rules. In the glow of the candle, the steward's quill scratches across parchment. It is a sound few villagers ever encounter. Paper, ink, and literacy itself are luxuries reserved for those connected to the upper tiers of medieval society. To the villagers, the steward exists somewhere above them, important, necessary, and often resented. In the church, a faint light may burn near the altar, tended by the priest before he retired. The church is the village's spiritual anchor, its stone walls standing firm through storms, sickness, and centuries of change. Inside, crucifixes and icons cast long shadows, their shapes shifting in the dim light. The priest sleeps in a small adjoining house, weary from tending both spiritual and practical concerns. His flock relies on him not only for sermons, but for guidance in everyday matters, disputes, illnesses, births, deaths. His role is as constant as the church bell. Hours pass slowly for those awake, and swiftly for those deeply asleep. A child whimpers in a dream, turning over. A mother instinctively drapes an arm across the child, though still mostly asleep herself. In another cottage, a man wakes, abruptly, unsure of what roused him. He listens, nothing but the wind. He relaxes and drifts back into the restless, shallow sleep common in the medieval world. Continuous, uninterrupted rest is rare. Sleep comes in segments, shaped by the rise and fall of the fire's warmth and the distant sounds of the village. As the night reaches its deepest point, the sky stretches above like an endless void. Without light pollution, the stars burn fiercely. The Milky Way arcs overhead, a luminous river that medieval people see with clarity modern observers rarely experience. They know the constellations not by scientific understanding, but through stories passed down orally. The stars are part calendar, part myth, part compass. Some villagers believe the stars themselves influence events on Earth, shaping fortunes and disasters alike. A thin frost forms on the ground. The roofs, paths, and tools left outside pick up a glittering sheen. The cold sharpens every sound, the creaking of a cottage door shifting slightly in its frame, the rustle of thatch stirring beneath a light wind, the distant hoot of an owl hunting along the field edges. These small noises are amplified by the stillness, drawing the ear whether wanted or not. Somewhere, a newborn cries. Its parents wake instantly. Infants are vulnerable, and every cry is met with urgency. The mother picks up the child, rocking gently, murmuring a prayer under her breath. Survival for infants is never guaranteed, and every night brings with it a quiet fear. She holds the baby close to her chest, warming it with her own body heat. Eventually the child settles, its small breathing steadying in the darkness. Not far away, a man with persistent cough pushes himself upright, struggling to breathe in the cold air. His wife wakes and helps him sip warm ale. Illness spreads easily in the cramped cottages, and remedies are limited. She rubs his chest with a salve made from rendered fat and herbs, hoping it will ease his breathing long enough for rest. She does not sleep again for a long time. Slowly, so slowly that no one marks the moment, the darkness begins to loosen. The stars fade, the wind shifts, the air takes on a slightly different texture, a less biting edge. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster senses the approaching dawn before any human does. Inside the cottages, bodies begin to stir. The elderly woman awakens again, feeling her joints ache less now than earlier. A mother opens her eyes to the soft glow of embers still alive beneath ash. A shepherd rubs his arms, stiff from the cold, and rises to check the flock once more. The night has passed, not peacefully, not without worry, but passed nonetheless. And the cycle begins again. The medieval world does not wait. It simply moves from one necessity to the next. As the first hint of pale blue touches the horizon, villagers rise from their beds, stretch weary limbs, and prepare to greet the day. The deep night retreats. Dawn returns. Life resumes. Dawn returns to the medieval village not with sudden brilliance, but with a gradual thinning of darkness. The sky softens from black to deep blue to a muted gray, signaling the start of another day shaped by labor, routine, and instinct. The first sounds come quietly at first, a shift on a straw bed, the low murmur of a waking child, the soft cluck of a hen inside a cottage. Then, as if on cue, a rooster calls out, echoing across the village green. The cry seems to awaken everyone and everything at once. Inside the cottages, families rise from their beds, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Blankets are shaken out, and straw is swept into piles to be refreshed or replaced. The air inside the homes is cold and still, heavy with the smell of ashes and wool. Before anything else happens, the fire must be revived again. Embers that barely survived the night are coaxed back into flame through careful breath and patience. A faint crackle soon fills the room, a welcome sound that signals warmth, safety, and the beginning of morning chores. The day's first meal is humble. Yesterday's bread, tough from the night air, is dipped in ale to soften it. A ladle of reheated pottage warms the belly, though it tastes much the same as it did the night before. Food in the medieval world is not meant to excite, it is meant to sustain. Even children know this. Their faces show no disappointment, only acceptance. Breakfast is brief, eaten quickly, because daylight is precious and the fields are waiting. Stepping outside, villagers inhale the chill of early morning. Mist hangs low over the green, clinging to the air like a veil. Dew glistens on thatched rooftops and weaves silver beads into the cobwebs stretched across cottage eaves. The church tower stands tall at the center of the village, its silhouette sharpened by the rising sun. A few villagers bow their heads briefly toward it, offering a whispered prayer before beginning their day. Men head straight to the fields, tools slung over their shoulders. Their boots leave prints in the damp soil as they walk. their breath drifting behind them in small clouds. The open fields stretch out before them, divided into long strips worked collectively by the community. The sight of these strips, rows upon rows of dark, upturned earth, represents both opportunity and responsibility. Here lies their entire livelihood. Here lies the community's survival. The plowing resumes where it left off yesterday. Oxen, calm and slow-moving, grunt as they pull heavy wooden plows. The men guide them with steady hands and soft commands. The earth gives way beneath the blades, folding upward in dark waves. Birds circle overhead, swooping low to snatch worms exposed in the freshly turned soil. The morning light grows stronger, illuminating the men's faces as they work. Despite the chill, sweat begins to bead on their brows. Farming is not simply a job, it is a test of endurance. Meanwhile, women begin their daily work with practiced rhythm. Water must be fetched before the paths become too crowded. 2 wooden buckets are hoisted, one on each side of a carrying yoke balanced across the shoulders. The walk to the well is not far, but the weight is considerable. Water sloshes with each step, threatening to spill over the sides. The return journey is more difficult. A misstep could mean starting over, losing precious time and effort. Back at the cottages, grain is ground by hand. The quern stones are heavy and grind slowly, producing flour 1 handful at a time. The repetitive motion aches the arms and shoulders, yet it continues uninterrupted. Without flour, there is no bread. Without bread, there is no meal. Responsibility does not allow for rest. Children assist with tasks suited to their size. One gathers eggs from the family's hens, checking beneath feathers with small, careful hands. Another collects firewood stacked near the garden wall. A third chases geese away from the vegetable plots, waving their arms and shouting with exaggerated determination. These jobs mimic adult responsibilities, preparing the children for lives filled with similar tasks. The village green grows livelier as the sun climbs higher. Dogs bark at each other. Chickens scatter across the ground in frantic bursts of energy. The smithy's hammer begins its steady clanging once again, echoing across the fields. Inside his workshop, the blacksmith pulls a glowing bar of iron from the forge. Sparks fly as he strikes it repeatedly, shaping it into a tool that some villager desperately needs for the day's work. His craft is essential, his schedule unrelenting. Nearby, the carpenter inspects a wheel he repaired late yesterday. He spins it on its axle, listening for imperfections. A single wobble will cost someone a day's work if the wheel collapses under weight. The carpenter nods in satisfaction and sets the wheel aside for the cart driver to collect later. The tanner begins his day as well, though his work is far less pleasant. The stench of tanning, soaking hides in urine, lime, and water, drifts across the village in potent waves. Yet villagers tolerate it because leather is indispensable. Shoes, belts, harnesses, and countless other items depend on the tanner's unpleasant craft. He works with stoic endurance, ignoring the smell that repels others. On the periphery of the village, shepherds tend to their flocks. Sheep graze peacefully, their wool heavy and thick. The shepherds monitor them closely, scanning for signs of illness or injury. A sheep that wanders too far must be guided back. A lamb bleating alone is quickly investigated. Shepherds learn to read their animals as easily as others read the sky. Herding, like farming, is a craft shaped by experience and patience. The shepherd's dog assists with tireless enthusiasm, responding instantly to whistles and gestures. Together, man and dog maintain order in the flock, a partnership refined over centuries. As morning deepens, the smell of baking bread wafts from the communal oven. Villagers gather around it, leaving loaves marked with unique patterns, slashes, crosses, spirals, so they can identify their own when they return. The oven master tends the fire, judging by instinct when the temperature is right. Bread is the foundation of every diet, and its creation is a communal affair. Some women sit outside their cottages, spinning wool into yarn, fingers moving swiftly. The spindle hums as it spins, twisting fiber into thread. The process is slow but vital. Clothing wears out quickly and must be constantly replaced or repaired. The women talk as they spin, exchanging advice, sharing gossip, discussing upcoming holy days, weddings, feasts, or concerns about the harvest. The reeve walks the village paths, observing the day's progress. His presence is a reminder of the obligations every villager owes to the manor. He stops to speak with a farmer about tomorrow's labor on the domain. He updates the smith on a tool the Lord's household needs repaired. His authority is quiet but pervasive. By late morning the sky is clear, the work is steady, and the village pulses with the rhythm it has known for centuries. A medieval day is long, and it is just beginning. As late morning slides toward midday, the pace of the medieval village reaches its full stride. Every corner of the settlement hums with activity, the scrape of hoes in the soil, the clatter of pots inside cottages, the dull thud of a carpenter's adze striking wood. The village is alive, not with chaos, but with purposeful movement, each action contributing in some way to the community's survival. In the fields, men adjust their work as the sun climbs. The light grows brighter, revealing the faint shimmer of dew still lingering on unworked strips of land. The villagers wipe sweat from their brows, though the air remains cool. Farming demands physical endurance more than heat tolerance. Each man's back bends in a familiar rhythm as he guides his oxen along the furrows. Their breath comes in steady patterns, matched by the low groans of the animals and the squeak of wooden harness fittings. When a plow hits a hard patch of soil or a stone lodged deep beneath the surface, the team stops. A farmer kneels, digging out the obstruction with bare hands or a small iron tool. His palms become rougher every season, shaped by the land as much as he shapes it in return. The strip must be smooth and evenly turned, or water will pool unevenly and ruin the crops. These tiny adjustments, barely noticeable to an outsider, matter profoundly to those who depend on the yield. Nearby, a small group of men works on clearing a drainage ditch. Mud sucks at their boots as they lift clumps of earth with long-handled shovels. Waterlogged fields are the enemy of productivity, and in England's unpredictable climate, drainage is a constant concern. Their hands and faces smear with mud, but they continue until the water flows cleanly along its intended path. The open field layout ensures that no family works alone. The villagers move among the strips with ease, helping one another as needed, sharing advice, and offering criticism when a plow line wanders too far to the left or right. These interactions keep the village knitted together. Cooperation is not merely helpful, it is the only way to keep famine at bay. Back in the village, the communal oven becomes a focal point as the oven master begins removing the earliest loaves. The thick stone structure radiates heat, left over from hours of burning a large fire to warm its interior. A woman collects her loaf and wraps it in cloth, holding it like a treasure as the warm scent fills her nose. Fresh bread is a rare luxury, but when the timing is right, the village steals small moments of sensory joy from its simple foods. The miller, hearing the oven's bustle, steps outside his mill and wipes flour from his hands. His shift is nearly constant. The wheel turns as long as the water flows. Grain brought to him earlier has been ground into coarse flour, the type used daily for pottage and bread. It is not the fine white flour enjoyed by nobles or wealthy merchants. That belongs to a different world. The villagers take what they can, appreciative yet always wary of how much the miller keeps for himself. His role is indispensable, but his reputation is forever caught between gratitude and suspicion. Women continue weaving throughout the late morning hours. Looms set up in the dim interiors of cottages clatter rhythmically as threads are interlaced. Wool, dyed with plant-based colors, madder for red, woad for blue, weld for yellow, forms patterns that are both functional and beautiful. A well-made piece of cloth is one of the most valuable items a family can produce. It may become a tunic for a son, a cloak for winter, or something to barter for metal tools. Children weave underfoot, playing games that intertwine with imitation of adult responsibilities. A pair of young boys pretend to hold court, reenacting scenes they witnessed in the manor yard. One playing the steward, the other a villager, begging forgiveness for letting his goats wander into a neighbor's garden. Their high-pitched voices mimic the seriousness of the adults, and several women smile as they listen. Along the green, a small group of girls sits in a circle, braiding rushes into small mats or simple toys. Their fingers work quickly, guided by the ease of youth and constant practice. One girl begins singing a song, its melody familiar to all. Soon the others join in, their voices blending, rising above the rustling of wind in thatched roofs. The reeve, having completed his inspections in the fields, walks through the village square, noting the activities of various households. He stops to speak with a woman brewing ale in a large iron pot. The aroma of malt and yeast fills the air, drifting through the lanes. Brewing is one of the most common domestic industries, and ale serves not only as drink but as a safe substitute for water. The reeve tastes a small sample from a ladle, checking its quality. Everyone, even the reeve, depends on ale, and a spoiled batch affects the entire village. By now, the sun is nearly overhead. The village's shadows grow small and sharp. Hunger begins to stir in stomachs worn thin from labor. In the cottages, women prepare the midday meal, simple but filling: bread, cheese, perhaps a bit of salted fish or leftover pottage. Older children run across the green, calling their fathers from the fields. The men begin their slow walk back, wiping their hands on their tunics and stretching stiff shoulders. The communal break from work is one of the few times the villagers can relax even slightly. Families gather near their cottages or sit on low stools outside, enjoying the brief respite from labor. They eat quickly but talk freely. The conversations drift between practical concerns and light-hearted observations. The weather's sudden change, a neighbor's unruly cow, a rumor about a distant market town, or the amusing antics of children earlier that morning. A dog lies at a farmer's feet, panting as it waits for scraps. A child laughs as a goose attempts to chase him, wings outstretched in indignant protest. A woman nurses her infant under a wool shawl, rocking gently as she listens to her husband describe a stubborn patch of soil that refused to turn. Now and then a villager glances toward the sky, noting the shape and movement of clouds. The medieval world has no meteorologists, only instinct and experience. When the sky darkens slightly or the wind changes direction, all eyes turn upward. They know rain could arrive swiftly, bringing relief or ruin depending on the stage of the crops. The priest joins the villagers, carrying a small loaf he received as part of the church tithe. He greets each household, offering blessings or words of caution. His presence is a steadying force, a reminder of the spiritual dimension that underlies every aspect of medieval life. Sin, virtue, divine favor, and misfortune are concepts villagers navigate daily with the priest's guidance. As the midday meal ends, the villagers stretch, sigh, and prepare to return to their tasks. Children scatter in all directions. Women clear dishes and rush to complete household chores before the demands of evening set in. Men head back to the fields, their bodies tired, but their resolve unchanged. The sun has passed its peak, but much of the day remains. The rhythm continues, unbroken, carrying the village steadily toward the evening that waits ahead. The afternoon settles in with a steadiness that feels almost ritualistic. The midday meal has given the villagers a brief pause, but now the work resumes with renewed focus. The sun sits high, but its warmth is gentle, filtered by drifting clouds that move lazily across the sky. The village once again becomes a tapestry of labor, each thread woven by hands, shaped through generations of repetition. In the fields, the men return to their strips with determined pace. A few take a moment to stretch their backs before gripping their tools again. The oxen, after resting in the shade, are coaxed back into position. Their deep, rumbling hoofs fill the quiet spaces between human voices. The plows sink into the soil once more, carving furrows with methodical precision. The men talk as they work, soft conversations about weather patterns, the last year's yield, or the local disputes that always flicker along the edges of village life. One man pauses to examine a patch of soil that looks lighter in color than the rest. He kneels, letting the earth crumble between his fingers. Too sandy. It will drain quickly, which is good for some crops but poor for others. He adjusts his plan for sowing accordingly. Knowledge of land is not written in books for these villagers. It is learned through seasons, through mistakes, through stories from fathers and grandfathers. It is passed down in gestures as much as in words. Nearby, two young boys gather stones from the field's edge, placing them in a pile. Stones break plows, and the boys' job is crucial. They work barefoot, splashing through puddles formed by recent rain. Their laughter rings across the open land as they challenge each other to see who can find the biggest stone. Even in tasks that demand effort, children find ways to carve out moments of play. Back in the village, the communal spaces grow busy again. Women step outside their cottages with baskets of wool. They sit in small groups beneath shaded spots, spinning while they talk. The soft whir of the spindle creates a tranquil backdrop for conversation. Topics shift easily, from a girl nearing marriageable age to concerns about a neighbor's illness to whispered stories about distant counties where plague or famine struck. Every bit of news, no matter how small or uncertain, spreads far and fast in rural communities. A woman stirring a pot over her fire glances toward the path leading into the village. A lone traveler approaches, dust-covered, weary, carrying a bundle strapped to his back. He might be a peddler, a messenger, or simply someone seeking shelter for the night. Travelers bring news from afar, news that villagers crave, but also approach with caution. The traveler lifts a hand in greeting as he nears, and a young boy sprints toward the Reeve's house to alert him. The Reeve is responsible for deciding whether an outsider may stay and whether he poses any risk. The man is allowed to rest in the shade near the green while the Reeve questions him. Villagers pretend not to listen, but subtly angle their bodies to catch snippets of conversation. The traveler speaks of a noble's dispute brewing miles away, of strange weather that has ruined crops in another shire, of merchants who claim prices will rise soon. These tidings ripple through the village minds, reshaping worries and expectations. The Reeve nods, thoughtfully, then directs the traveler toward the church, where the priest offers shelter to strangers who mean no harm. Life continues around the visitor, but the mood shifts slightly. News from outside reminds villagers that they live within a wider realm, a realm of kings, wars, taxes, storms, and uncertainties they cannot control. It makes the tasks of the afternoon feel heavier, more urgent, as if completing them today might somehow guard against tomorrow's misfortunes. The blacksmith, still hard at work, plunges a glowing iron blade into a bucket of water. The sizzling hiss fills the air, followed by a cloud of steam that rises toward the rafters of his workshop. He examines the blade, tapping its edge with his finger. Good, sharp, strong. It will serve the farmer well. The blacksmith wipes sweat from his brow, soot marking his face like war paint. His work is never finished. Someone always arrives with a broken hinge, a dull knife, or a plowshare in need of reforging. But the smith enjoys a measure of respect unmatched by many. Without him, the village becomes vulnerable. On the other side of the green, the carpenter helps a family repair a sagging barn wall. They lift the new timber beam into place, securing it with wooden pegs hammered through drilled holes. The barn will hold out the wind better now. Every structure in the village undergoes constant maintenance. Thatch must be replaced before it molds. Walls need patching. Doors require fixing. The carpenter's skill holds the village together quite literally. At the edge of the common pasture, a group of women gathers near the dyeing tubs. Cloth is submerged in steaming mixtures of plant dyes, turning it shades of brown, green, or muted blue. Bright colors are rare and expensive. The villagers rely on what nature provides. The air around them smells of boiled herbs and wet wool. They lift the cloth with long wooden poles, watching the transformation with satisfaction. Color brings a sense of beauty to the starkness of their lives. Mid-afternoon light begins to soften. The sun has dipped slightly, casting longer shadows that stretch across the village lanes. This is often the period of the day when small repairs and supplementary tasks are tackled. A woman mends a tear in a child's tunic. A man sharpens his scythe on a whetstone, slow circles preserving the blade for harvest season. Children sweep fallen leaves from thresholds. The reeve checks a section of fencing near the stream for signs of damage from last night's wind. In the meadow, the shepherd calls his flock with a distinct whistle. The sheep, scattered across the hillside, lift their heads almost in unison. Slowly they move toward him, guided by the dog running sweeping arcs behind them. The shepherd counts them carefully. One missing could mean trouble. Satisfied, he begins leading them toward a sheltered area closer to the village, where they can graze until evening. Farther away, a pair of adolescents wade into the shallow stream, checking fish traps set earlier. They lift a woven basket from the water, examining its contents. A couple of small fish flop at the bottom, enough to add flavor to pottage tonight. They reset the traps, ensuring they are secure. Catching fish is not a guaranteed source of food, but every bit helps. As the light continues to change, the village collectively senses the approach of evening. The atmosphere shifts once more, a gentle lowering of energy as people prepare to finish what they can before darkness asserts itself. Tools are gathered, animals are checked, fires inside cottages are stoked in anticipation of the cool night ahead. The medieval day is long and filled with unending cycles of effort. But the afternoon brings relief, not in the form of rest, but in the sense that the hardest work has passed. Evening is coming, supper awaits. Stories will soon be shared beside the hearth. There is comfort in knowing the pattern continues, unchanged, familiar, deeply human. Evening begins its slow descent over the medieval village long before the sun is fully set. The air cools perceptibly, carrying with it the scent of earth and wood smoke. Shadows stretch across the green, elongating until they meet and blur. The quality of the light softens, shifting from a bright clarity to a warm, golden hue that touches every rooftop, every path, every field. This is the hour when the day's final tasks gather urgency, for night in the medieval world is absolute, and few dare to work in its depths. In the fields, the farmers finish the last passes of their plows. Each man feels the weight of the day in his muscles, the ache settling deep into shoulders and lower backs. The oxen pull more slowly now, their breaths labored, their flanks darkened with sweat. The men guide them gently, aware that overworking the animals can endanger the entire community. A single injured ox could delay the season's progress or force a family into debt. With practiced care, the men unhitch the animals, rub their flanks, and lead them back toward the village by rope or gentle nudges. The boys who gathered stones earlier now help by collecting tools left at the field's edge. They drag hoes, mattocks, and wooden rakes behind them, proud of their contribution. Older men clap their shoulders and nod in approval. A day's work well done, even for children, strengthens the sense of belonging that anchors village life. As the men make their way home, they walk in small groups, exchanging final comments about the day. Who had trouble with stubborn soil, whose ox pulled particularly well, whether tomorrow's sky will hold rain. Their boots kick up dust from the well-worn paths. They walk not hurriedly, but with a steady sense of completion. Back in the village, preparations for evening meals begin. Fires that had dwindled after the midday meal are now stoked vigorously. Sparks leap upward as fresh wood is added. Cooking pots are filled with water, vegetables, and bits of yesterday's leftovers. The scent of leeks, carrots, barley, and herbs wafts into the air. Pottage, never glamorous, always dependable, bubbles beneath the careful eyes of women who adjust the flavors with pinches of salt, sprigs of sage, or drops of leftover ale. A child runs across the green, laughing as a goose chases him with outstretched wings. Two young girls collect herbs from small garden patches behind their cottages, chatting in soft voices about things of great importance in their world: a friend's new dress, the prospect of an upcoming feast day, or the mischief of the boy next door. Their baskets fill with rosemary, thyme, mint, and comfrey, plants essential to both flavor and medicine. The village's livestock returns home in an uneven parade of bleats, grunts, and clucks. The shepherd guides the sheep to their pen, counting them with a practiced eye. The dog trots proudly beside him, tail wagging. Chickens flap and scatter as women shake handfuls of grain, calling the birds to their roosts. A pig snuffles loudly at the edge of the green, rooting around in the dirt until its owner shouts and guides it home with a stick. The blacksmith's forge, glowing bright most of the day, dims now as he quenches his final piece of metal. He holds the finished tool, a small axe head, but he doesn't admire it long. He has made hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Instead, he sets it on a shelf to cool completely. His apprentice sweeps the workshop floor, collecting stray nails and bits of scrap metal. Nothing is wasted here. Even small fragments may find new purpose. The carpenter completes the last of his repairs, fitting a new latch onto a cottage door. He tests it twice to ensure it holds. The homeowner thanks him warmly, offering a small loaf of bread as payment, a modest but meaningful gesture between neighbors. The carpenter accepts with a smile. Barter forms the backbone of village economics. Goods, labor, and favors circulate constantly, balancing needs in ways no coin ever could. The reeve takes one final look around the village. His eyes scan the fields beyond, ensuring no tools have been left behind and that all oxen made it back safely. He checks that the fences around the gardens are intact and that no animals have escaped. When he is satisfied, he nods to himself and begins walking toward his cottage, the day's responsibilities nearly complete. In the churchyard, the priest prepares for evening prayers. He stands beneath the stone tower, where small swallows dart back and forth in the fading light. He rings the bell, one slow, deep toll. The sound rolls across the village, resonant and unmistakable. Families hear it and turn their attention toward the spiritual side of life, reminding themselves of duties that go beyond work and survival. Some villagers walk to the church for the short service, others murmur prayers in their homes. The priest speaks about gratitude for labor done well, warns against pride and selfishness, and offers guidance for navigating the moral challenges of daily life. Religion anchors the villagers emotionally and psychologically in a world that often offers little comfort. As the prayers conclude, the priest steps outside to speak with villagers individually. They share concerns about illness, disputes, or personal struggles. His counsel is not authoritative but communal. He is one of them, raised in similar conditions, understanding their fears intimately. With the sunlight fading further, the cottage interiors grow softer and warmer. Firelight flickers across the walls. The smell of dinner fills each home. Families gather on benches or low stools, eager to rest after hours of labor. Pottage is ladled into bowls. Bread is passed around. A small piece cheese, if available, is shared carefully. The conversation during supper is simple but comforting. A man describes how an ox refused to move for several minutes, causing everyone to laugh. A woman mentions a goose that managed to sneak into her garden. A child proudly shows a smooth stone found earlier, convinced it is something magical. These small exchanges braid their lives together, creating bonds strong enough to withstand hardship. Outside, dusk has deepened. The sky is a pale gold near the horizon, fading to deep blue overhead. The first stars appear as faint pinpricks. Smoke from the chimneys rises straight upward in narrow columns before dissipating into the cool air. After supper, the family remains gathered near the hearth. The fire burns brighter now, fed with logs saved for evening warmth. The father sharpens a small knife or repairs a broken tool. The mother weaves, spins, or patches clothing. Children listen to stories, their favorite entertainment. Tales of saints, mischievous spirits, heroic ancestors, or ancient battles fill their imagination. Some stories warn, others delight. All are cherished. The night grows closer, its presence felt like a slow encroaching tide. But for the moment, the villagers are safe inside their warm cottages, surrounded by family, sustained by food, and comforted by tradition. The day is ending. The night world prepares itself, and the medieval village, though weary, feels whole. Night settles gently at first, softening the edges of the medieval village as if draping it in a velvet cloth. The last strips of daylight cling stubbornly to the horizon before fading fully, and with their disappearance comes the unmistakable shift from the world of labor to the world of shadows, stories, and rest. For the villagers, this transition is as familiar as the movement of the seasons. The night may carry mystery and unease, but it also provides the only hours of relative calm they will know. Cottages glow from within like lanterns scattered across a dark field. Firelight flickers against wattle and daub walls, animating them with moving shapes that transform the modest homes into spaces of warmth and comfort. The air outside grows cold, crisp, carrying the scent of smoke and damp earth. A dog trots past a doorway, sniffing the ground before curling beside a haystack for sleep. Chickens cluck softly as they settle on their roosts. The sounds of the village soften into a hushed chorus. Inside one cottage, the family gathers close around the hearth. The fire has been built high for the evening, sending sparks dancing up the chimney. Shadows move across faces, exaggerating expressions and lending an almost theatrical quality to the stories being told. The father, his voice low and steady, recounts a tale passed down through generations, a story of the old woods beyond the ridge, where strange lights were said to drift between trees, where a traveler once wandered for hours, though he swore the walk should have taken minutes. The children lean forward, eyes wide. They've heard the tale before, but stories take on new life in the shifting glow of firelight. A daughter, holding her wool doll tightly, whispers a question only her mother can hear. "Are the lights real?" The mother smiles, brushing the girl's hair aside. "Stories remind us to be careful," she murmurs. "Some truths are not meant to be seen at night." Across the village, in another cottage, an elderly couple sits on a bench made smooth by decades of use. The man sharpens a small blade, running a whetstone along its edge with slow, precise movements. His wife sorts through dried herbs in a wooden bowl: sage, mint, feverfew, and yarrow. Each has a purpose. Tomorrow a child may wake coughing, or a man may injure his hand. Remedies must always be ready. The elderly woman learned these practices from her own mother, who learned them from hers. Knowledge is not written, but lived, tested, shared, and deeply trusted. As the fire burns steady, she sifts the herbs and tells her husband about the traveler who arrived earlier. "He said there was famine north of here," she reports quietly. "Too much rain ruined their barley." The man nods slowly, understanding immediately the danger of such news. A failed harvest anywhere is unsettling. A failed harvest nearby is a sign to watch the sky with even greater vigilance. "Pray the weather holds," he says simply. Meanwhile, in the churchyard, the priest stands beneath the stars for a brief moment before retiring for the night. He looks upward, his breath visible in the cooling air. The heavens stretch wide above him, brilliant and clear, unmarred by human lights. He sees familiar patterns: the Dipper, the Milky Way, constellations tied to biblical stories he recites on feast days. He thinks of the villagers in their cottages, the concerns they shared with him, the blessings they asked for. He whispers a quiet prayer for their protection before extinguishing his candle and stepping into his small residence. Throughout the village, stories continue. Some are humorous tales of clumsy animals or foolish neighbors. Others are cautionary tales about greedy kings, lost travelers, or spirits that prey on the careless. The medieval imagination is rich, colorful, and deeply intertwined with faith and fear. The line between the natural and the supernatural is thin. Villagers do not question the existence of forces beyond their control. They accept them as part of the world's fabric. As the fire begins to settle into glowing embers, the energy in each cottage dims as well. The father sets aside his tools, rubbing his hands together to warm them. The mother finishes mending a tunic, folding it carefully before rising to check on the children. Some have already surrendered to sleep, heads resting on folded blankets, limbs stretched out in relaxed abandon. Others fight sleep stubbornly, determined to hear every last word of whatever tale is being told. A gust of wind rattles a shutter, causing the parents to glance toward the window. Wind at night is always a bit unnerving. It carries sounds strangely, making distant noises seem close and harmless ones seem threatening. A dog barks somewhere far off. The flutter of wings suggests an owl hunting near the edge of the green. Insignificant sounds by daylight, but charged with meaning in the dark. Eventually the father stands and begins banking the fire. He uses a small shovel to cover the embers with a thick layer of ash, suffocating their flames but trapping heat that will survive until morning. This practice is instinctive, essential. A fire that burns too hot overnight risks disaster. A fire that goes out entirely means a cold start tomorrow. The balance is delicate, learned through years of repetition. The family prepares for sleep. Blankets are pulled close. A child whispers one last question before settling. "Will it be cold tonight?" The mother kisses the child's forehead. "We have each other. We'll be warm enough." And in the medieval world, that is not a sentimental statement, it is literal truth. Body heat is one of the most reliable sources of warmth in the drafty cottages. Night deepens fully now. Darkness presses against the shutters. The air grows still. The last murmurs fade into silence. The villagers' breathing becomes rhythmic, synchronized with the faint crackle of the hearth. Outside, the paths disappear into shadow. The green becomes a vast, indistinct plain. Only the stars remain visible, watching silently over the sleeping community. The animals settle too. Sheep huddle together in their pen, their wool insulating them from the cold. The pigs snore loudly, occasionally shifting in their straw beds. Dogs curl tightly, tails wrapped over noses. Even the geese quiet, their eyes half-lidded as they stand guard-like near the ponds. But the night belongs to more than sleep. It is a time when fears, both real and imagined, hover at the edge of awareness. Villagers believe that spirits walk more freely after dark, that souls of the restless dead linger near crossroads, that misfortune searches for open doors. No one leaves the village now unless necessity demands it. No one calls out unless danger is imminent. Inside one cottage, a man wakes suddenly, heart pounding. He heard something, he's sure he did. A creak, a scrape, perhaps footsteps near the door. His wife stirs and whispers, "What is it?" He shakes his head, listening. Silence, only the wind. Yet for several long moments they remain still, tense, waiting. When nothing more comes, he exhales slowly and lies back down, pulling the blanket close. This is the rhythm of medieval nights, calm yet charged with possibility. And just as the deepest darkness settles, something shifts. The stars begin to fade, the air lightens slightly, and the faintest glimmer of dawn hints at the horizon. The night has passed, and soon the village will rise again. Dawn arrives subtly, as if unsure at first whether it should return. The horizon lightens from black to deep gray, then to a pale blue that slowly pushes back the heaviness of night. Birds begin their first tentative calls, testing the air, announcing the moment before the sun even appears. A rooster's crow echoes across the green, loud, confident, and familiar. And with that signal, the medieval village awakens once more, returning to the cycle that shapes every day of the year. Inside a cottage, a mother stirs before anyone else. Years of practice have trained her body to wake just as the sky begins to lighten. She sits up quietly to avoid waking her youngest child, whose head rests against her arm. The fire in the hearth has sunk into a pile of glowing embers. A faint warmth rises from it, but not enough to break the morning chill that hangs in the air like a thin frost. She rises, wraps her wool shawl tightly, and kneels at the hearth. With slow precision, she uncovers the embers, gently blowing until the orange glow brightens. She adds a handful of kindling, then a larger piece of wood. Flames rise timidly at first, then grow into a steady crackle. The fire lifts the shadows from the corners of the cottage, illuminating the straw bed where her family lies bundled together. The father awakens next, stretching stiff muscles that never seem to fully recover before the next day begins. He sits on the edge of the bed, rubbing his eyes, already thinking of the labor awaiting him. Today he must finish plowing his strip and begin repairing an area where the winter floods weakened the soil. The list of tasks never shortens, only shifts. Children wake slowly, blinking in the soft glow of the firelight. One rolls over and pulls a blanket over his head in a futile attempt to steal a few more moments of sleep. Another sits upright immediately, full of energy, ready to rush outside despite the cold. Their mother herds them gently but firmly toward the morning routine. Breakfast is modest, just like every morning. Last night's pottage is thinned with water and reheated. A piece of bread is shared among the family, dipped in ale to soften its edges. The youngest child refuses her portion at first, pushing it away with a small scowl, but her father coaxes her gently until she accepts a bite. Food cannot be wasted. Every crumb matters. The father pulls on his boots, worn and cracked from years of wear. He ties his hood securely, preparing for the wind that always seems to find its way through the open fields. Before stepping outside, he pushes open the shutter window and peers out. The world is gray and still. Smoke rises from a few chimneys as other households begin their fires. A thin mist curls along the ground, making the green appear to float above the earth. He nods to himself. Good weather for work. Outside, the village hums awake. Doors creak open, and the first villagers step into the cold air, breath forming small clouds. Some greet one another with quiet nods. Others walk briskly, eager to reach the fields. The reeve stands near the green, hands folded behind his back, scanning the village with a stern but attentive gaze. He watches who begins their duties promptly, who lingers, who seems troubled. His role is not only to monitor work, but to understand the village pulse. The blacksmith emerges from his workshop, stretching his arms before lighting the forge. He knows he will soon be visited by men seeking repairs or needing new tools. The smell of coal dust fills his lungs as he prepares the fire, coaxing it into a fiery roar that will heat iron until it glows white. The forge's early clangs echo like a heartbeat across the village, reminding everyone that the workday has officially begun. Women begin their own tasks with similar determination. One walks toward the well, carrying 2 wooden buckets balanced on a yoke across her shoulders. Another brushes down the family's cow, checking for signs of illness or injury. A third stirs a pot near her hearth, adding herbs to create a broth meant to soothe her husband's persistent cough. For medieval women, labor runs in endless circles, cooking, cleaning, tending animals, spinning wool, but each repetition sustains the household in essential ways. Children scatter across the village as they are assigned simple chores. A boy moves quickly toward the henhouse, checking for fresh eggs before the hens stray outside. A girl is sent to gather firewood from a stack near the edge of the green. Another child, barely old enough to walk steadily, imitates older siblings by collecting small sticks and stones, though no one expects much from him beyond enthusiasm. Childhood is brief, but learning begins early. In the fields, the men resume their work with an unspoken understanding. They walk along the same paths worn into the earth by centuries of footsteps. The open field system stretches wide before them, the strips arranged like long ribbons across the landscape. This communal layout is not accidental. It is the foundation of medieval agriculture. Each family holds multiple strips spread across different fields to ensure fairness. Good soil and bad soil are shared equally, binding the village into a cooperative whole. The oxen grunt as they are yoked once more to the heavy plow. The farmer runs a hand along the plow's beam, checking it for cracks. He grips the handle firmly, gives a soft command, and the oxen begin pulling. The plow sinks into the soil, turning it over in smooth, dark rows. Birds swoop behind the plow line, eager for the worms and beetles exposed by the fresh cut. The farmer works with careful attention, aware that every inch of the strip matters. Not far away, Another group of men repairs a section of hedgerow damaged during the last storm. They weave branches tightly, reinforcing the barrier that keeps livestock from wandering. Good fences protect gardens, crops, and animals alike. A breach could cost a family weeks of food. The repair work is demanding, requiring strength and patience, but the men talk as they work, discussing last night's stories, sharing hopes for the upcoming feast day, or debating the weather signs in the morning sky. The smell of freshly turned soil mixes with the scent of distant wood smoke, creating a blend familiar to every villager. It is the smell of life itself, of work, of the land, of the seasons turning. The men continue until the sun sits higher, warming the air slightly. Their movements settle into a rhythm, each step matched to the plow's progress. Back in the village, a woman tends to her small garden plot. She checks the cabbage leaves for pests, pulls weeds, and gathers a handful of herbs for drying. These gardens may seem modest, but they are crucial. They provide flavor, medicine, and nutrition during times when stored grain runs low. A group of children begins playing a game near the green. They chase each other with sticks shaped like wooden swords, reenacting tales of knights and battles they've heard from travelers or priests. Though none of them will ever become knights, the imagination gives them permission to wander beyond the boundaries of their daily roles. The reeve pauses near the church, speaking briefly with the priest, who stands outside brushing dirt from his robe after tending the small garden behind the rectory. They exchange words about an upcoming tithe collection and rumors carried by yesterday's traveler. Their conversation is brief but meaningful. These are two of the village's pillars, and their cooperation ensures stability. As morning deepens, the village returns fully to the rhythm of life, seamlessly resuming the great cycle of work, nourishment, cooperation, and faith that has held it together for generations. The day is not new. It is another link in a long chain that stretches far behind and far ahead. As the morning advances, sunlight begins to settle more confidently over the medieval village, warming the thatched rooftops and casting a golden hue across the fields. The mist finally lifts, revealing the full sweep of the land, its gentle curves, its patchwork of strips and pastures, and the distant tree line where the forest begins. This moment, when the sun fully claims the day, marks a shift in the village's pace. The early morning rush has passed. Now the work settles into steady momentum. In the fields, men work in quiet rhythm. The repetitive scrape of the plow, the grunt of oxen, and the soft murmur of conversation form a kind of agricultural symphony. A farmer pauses to adjust the harness on one of his oxen, noticing the animal favoring a leg. Concern flickers across his face. An injured ox is more than an inconvenience. It can jeopardize the entire season. He examines the animal carefully, presses gently along the leg, and sighs with relief when it pulls away reflexively, but shows no real sign of injury. The farmer gives the ox a reassuring pat before returning to work. Nearby, another man scatters seed with a practiced motion, each handful thrown in a smooth arc. The seeds land evenly across the soil, a skill perfected through repetition rather than measurement. The farmer steps carefully between rows, mindful not to disturb his own work. These seeds represent hope as much as sustenance. A good harvest means security, warmth, and survival. A poor harvest means shortages, hunger, and fear. Across the village, the women are fully immersed in their tasks. One scrubs wooden bowls with a handful of sand and cold water, her hands turning red from the chill. Another kneads dough on a flour-covered board, her elbows moving rhythmically as she presses the mass into a smooth, workable shape. The scent of yeast rises faintly from the dough, mixing with the ever-present smell of smoke. The dough will rest near the hearth, until ready for the communal oven. A group of women gather near a cottage where a young mother is nursing an infant. They bring advice, herbs, and comforting words. Childbirth and infancy are times of both joy and anxiety in medieval life. The community plays a crucial role in helping mothers navigate these fragile months. One neighbor offers a small satchel filled with dried chamomile, meant to ease the child's digestion. Another suggests a warm compress for the mother's soreness. The atmosphere is gentle, supportive, filled with the quiet strength that binds the community. Not far away, older children assist their parents with small but essential tasks. A girl collects manure from the animals and carries it in a basket to the family's garden. The smell is strong, but she works without complaint. This is valuable fertilizer, vital for the cabbage and beans to grow well. A boy climbs onto a low stool to hang strips of rabbit meat near the hearth for drying, arranging them carefully so they will cure evenly. These children are learning the rhythms of life through action, not instruction. The village green grows livelier as the sun climbs higher. The traveler who arrived the day before sits under the shade of a tree, talking with a few curious villagers. He shares news of a far-off market where exotic spices, pepper, saffron, cinnamon, are being sold at astonishing prices. The villagers listen with fascination, though such luxuries are beyond their reach. Still, the stories expand their world, reminding them that beyond their fields and forests lies a realm filled with wonders and turmoil. A few steps away, the miller unloads sacks of grain brought by families earlier in the morning. He hoists them onto his shoulder and carries them inside the mill with surprising strength. The water wheel turns steadily, driven by the stream diverted through a carefully constructed channel. The rumble of grinding stones fills the space. Flour coats the miller's clothes, hair, even his eyebrows, making him appear dusted in white. He measures out the flour owed to each family, keeping a portion for himself, the traditional milling fee. Though he is an essential figure, the villagers' eyes follow him with quiet caution. Mills, after all, have a reputation for taking more than they should. Across the green, the carpenter inspects a wagon wheel he repaired earlier. He rolls it slowly, watching its motion. Satisfied, he hands it off to its owner, who thanks him effusively. The wheel is more than a tool. It is the means by which goods move, harvests are transported, and trade occurs. A broken wheel can halt a family's progress for days, making the carpenter's skill invaluable. At the edge of the village, near the tree line, the forester inspects fallen branches and looks for any signs of poaching. The Lord's woodland is protected, its resources tightly controlled. Unauthorized cutting of timber or hunting can result in harsh punishment. The forester's presence is both a reminder of the Lord's authority and a necessity for maintaining the balance between village needs and forest health. He carries a staff and a small axe, tools of both enforcement and stewardship. Children scatter like birds when the forester approaches, not because they fear him, but because they know the forest is not a place to linger without permission. They retreat to safer play areas, laughing as they chase each other around the green. Their games mimic the adult world, pretending to herd animals, shouting orders like reeves or stewards, staging mock battles with sticks. These games shape their identities and prepare them for their future roles in the village. A woman sitting at her cottage door spins wool on a drop spindle. Her hands are swift and sure, transforming raw fleece into thin, even thread. She glances up occasionally to watch her children play, then returns to her work. Spinning is a meditative task, one that allows the mind to wander while the hands maintain steady movement. The spindle whirs, the wool winds, and thread accumulates gradually, a quiet miracle of transformation. Across the way, an elderly man sits on a wooden stool repairing fishing nets. Though the village is inland, streams and ponds provide small but significant sources of food. He checks each, not carefully, knowing that a single tear can mean fewer fish and more hunger. His fingers are knotted with age, yet his movements remain precise, shaped by decades of repetition. The priest walks slowly along the path, greeting villagers as he passes. He pauses to offer blessings or to answer questions about the next feast day. Children run up to him, asking for stories or repeating lines from his last sermon. He smiles warmly, though he carries the weight of the community's worries on his shoulders. His presence brings comfort, a reminder that faith connects everyone here, giving meaning to hardships and triumphs alike. By midday, the village has entered its full rhythm again. The morning's tasks flow naturally into the afternoon's work. Fires continue burning. Tools continue moving. Conversations drift like threads across the green. Nothing feels rushed, yet nothing is idle. This is the essence of medieval life: motion without haste, purpose without pause, a deep and enduring connection to land, labor, and community. And as the sun climbs higher, casting the village in sharp light, the day continues its steady unfolding, one moment at a time. The sun begins its slow drift toward the western horizon, softening the brightness of midday into a gentler afternoon glow. Shadows lengthen across the village green, stretching like dark fingers from the cottage walls and livestock pens. The air grows cooler again, though still comfortable, carrying with it a mix of earthy smells: fresh soil from the fields, warm wool from grazing animals, and the faint tang of smoke curling from the chimneys. In the fields, the farmers continue their disciplined work, but the tempo eases slightly. The plow has carved enough furrows for the day, and the oxen walk with tired but steady steps. One man removes a stone lodged in the soil and tosses it aside, watching it roll down a gentle slope before returning to the plow. His hands are stained with dirt, his tunic damp with sweat, but his face shows a quiet satisfaction. Progress has been made. The land has responded well. The day is turning in their favor. A short distance away, two men gather bundles of harvested reeds from a marshy area. These reeds will later be used to repair thatched roofs or woven into mats, baskets, or simple screens. Working knee-deep in mud does not bother them. They have done this since childhood. Their hands are quick and practiced, their movements synchronized with the rhythm of lifting, tying, carrying. Each bundle is hoisted onto a cart, pulled by a patient donkey who flicks its ears lazily at the buzzing insects. Closer to the village, a pair of women scrub clothes in a small stream, their skirts hitched up to avoid the water. They strike garments against smooth rocks, rinsing and wringing with force. The cold water reddens their hands, but they continue with steady determination. Laundry is not a daily task, but a significant event when it occurs, requiring hours of labor and immense patience. Nearby, a toddler splashes at the stream's edge under the watchful eyes of an older sibling, giggling as small fish dart away from his hands. Back in the heart of the village, a group of young girls practices spinning using simple whirls. Their fingers fumble at times, but they learn quickly, encouraged by the older women who supervise. The girls speak softly about dreams they scarcely understand yet: future marriages, feast day dances, and the thrill of visiting nearby villages. Their laughter floats through the air like soft bells. Inside the smithy, the blacksmith works on one final piece before ending his day's labor. The forge glows a deep orange, illuminating the dark workshop. The air is thick with heat, making every breath warm and heavy. He hammers a piece of iron into shape, sparks leaping from each strike. When he plunges the metal into water, steam hisses upward, creating a short-lived cloud. The apprentice sweeps the floor, gathering fragments of iron to be melted again. Nothing is wasted, not in a world where every resource matters. Near the edge of the green, the carpenter and his son work together on repairing a large wooden cart. The boy watches his father's hands closely, mimicking each motion when allowed to try. The carpenter guides him firmly but kindly, adjusting his grip, showing him how to align a beam or measure the length of a peg. This apprenticeship begins not with formal instruction, but with imitation and steady exposure. Skills are passed down through generations, creating continuity within the community. A few villagers gather around the traveler, who is now more comfortable and relaxed than the day before. He sits on a wooden stool, polishing a small metal object he intends to sell or trade. One villager asks about conditions in the nearby town. Another inquires about prices for barley. The traveler answers in detail, offering bits of news, rumors, and speculation. Some of what he says will influence decisions in the coming weeks. Some will become stories retold at future gatherings. Some will fade into whispers. The reeve approaches, listening for a moment before quietly pulling the traveler aside. They speak about safety, the roads, and whether any danger currently threatens the region. Bandits, though rare, remain a concern. Once the reeve is satisfied, he nods and returns to his duties, leaving the traveler to share more of his tales. As afternoon deepens, the livestock stir with anticipation. Animals sense the approach of evening before humans do. The shepherd whistles sharply, signaling his dog. Together they guide the sheep toward the village pens. The dog moves with speed and precision, circling the flock, nudging stragglers forward. The sheep bleat softly as they file through the narrow gate. The shepherd closes the latch and pats his dog on the head, offering a small piece of bread as reward. Elsewhere, pigs root noisily near the edge of a cottage before being rounded up by a woman wielding a small switch. They grunt in protest but obey, waddling toward their sty. Chickens flap in bursts of chaos before gathering around scattered grain tossed on the ground. A rooster struts proudly between them, crowing loudly as if announcing his domain. In the gardens, women harvest whatever is ready, handfuls of beans, clusters of leafy greens, or sprigs of herbs. Each garden differs slightly, reflecting the taste and knowledge of its caretaker. The scents of rosemary, thyme, and lavender mix with the earthy smell of soil. The women exchange small tips: how to keep beetles away, when to water, which herbs thrive better in shade. These small acts of knowledge-sharing strengthen bonds between neighbors. Children, sensing the shift in the day, conclude their games. Some gather stones and sticks, tidying the green under gentle instruction. Others help carry small loads of firewood to their cottages. A few chase each other in one last burst of energy before being called inside. Their laughter fades gradually as they scatter toward home. The church bell tolls once, a soft, resonant note drifting across the roofs. It signals the close of the workday and gently reminds villagers to prepare for evening prayers. The priest walks across the green, greeting families as he passes. He pauses near the reeve, exchanging a few quiet words, then continues toward the church door. By now, the sun is low, washing the sky in warm colors: amber, rose, and violet. The village is bathed in this gentle light, giving everything a serene, almost otherworldly glow. Cottages appear golden, the fields burnish in soft tones, and the forest edge darkens into silhouette. Inside homes, fires are built higher. Pottage simmers, bread is sliced, Families gather on benches or low stools. The day's final conversations meander through simple joys and concerns, the stubborn ox, the traveler's strange stories, the forecast of rain, the progress of the children. These discussions shape the evening, grounding villagers in each other's presence. Outside, the air cools further. The last rays of sunlight disappear behind the trees. Evening has arrived fully, and with it comes the comforting certainty of routine, the warmth of community, and the quiet preparation for the night ahead. As the sun slips away entirely, and the last streaks of color drain from the sky, the medieval village enters a world of deepening shadow. Night doesn't descend suddenly here, not like a curtain falling, but rather builds gradually, tightening its presence around the cottages, the lanes, the fields, and the minds of the people. The rhythm of the day softens, slows, and reshapes itself into a quieter, more intimate pattern centered around firelight and family. Inside the cottages, flames crackle warmly in countless hearths, illuminating low wooden ceilings with a golden dance of light. Shadows flicker across the walls, stretching and shrinking in a mesmerizing pattern that has comforted generations of villagers. A pot of pottage simmers on nearly every fire, its surface bubbling with occasional plumes of steam. The smell of cooked barley, onions, and herbs fills the air, mingling with the smoky scent of burning wood. Families gather around their tables or stools as the meal is served. Children settle into place, their earlier energy softened by the long day. Fathers return from the fields with tired steps, lowering themselves onto benches with sighs of relief. Mothers ladle food into bowls, setting bread on the side, their movements habitual, practiced, and filled with care. The chatter that follows is light but meaningful, like the gentle hum of bees in summer, steady, comforting, familiar. A father speaks of the progress made in the fields, how the soil turned well today, how the oxen seemed in good spirits. Another shares news from the traveler about distant counties. A mother tells of a new batch of dye she hopes will take better this time. Children interject with stories of their play, exaggerating details, eyes bright with imagination. Laughter comes easily in these moments, slipping into the room like a welcome guest. Outside, the village green falls quiet except for the occasional bark of a dog or the soft clucking of chickens settling onto their roost. The last of the livestock has been secured, the gates latched, the pens checked twice. The shepherd's dog curls by the doorway of his master's cottage, one ear lifted as if listening for anything unusual. The pigs shuffle into their nests of straw, snorting softly. Even the geese, usually loud and irritable, tuck their heads under their wings. As the meal winds down inside the cottages, villagers shift into the slower rhythms of evening. A mother wipes her infant's face and wraps him in a soft wool cloth. A father sharpens a small knife or repairs a broken wooden spoon. An older child begins sorting beans or peas for tomorrow's meal, separating them carefully with small, nimble fingers. A teenage girl braids her hair while her mother prepares thread for weaving the next morning. Each movement contributes to the quiet harmony of the household. Stories begin to flow again as the night deepens. These tales are different from the daytime chatter, richer, more symbolic, shaped by centuries of folklore. A grandfather recounts the tale of the farmer who tried to cheat his neighbor and was cursed to wander as a restless spirit. A grandmother tells of a holy woman who once blessed a barren field, making it bloom with crops overnight. Children lean close, their eyes wide, the firelight reflecting in their pupils like sparks of wonder. In one cottage, an elderly woman shares a tale she learned as a child about the nightmare, a wicked spirit said to sit on people's chests as they slept, causing terrible dreams. Her listeners shiver but smile, knowing the story is as much a lesson as a threat, a reminder to sleep with a clean conscience, to live honestly, to avoid crossing unseen boundaries. A boy sitting near the fire whispers to his sister, asking if such a creature could enter their home. Their mother overhears and reassures them gently, "Not while the fire burns and we are together." The words comfort the children more than any explanation of faith or logic could. Elsewhere in the village, the priest finishes writing notes for Sunday's sermon by the dim light of a tallow candle. He reflects on the conversations he had throughout the day, advice given to a troubled young man, comfort offered to a woman grieving the loss of a relative, guidance requested by the reeve about community disputes. His role stretches far beyond theology. He is counselor, mediator, teacher, and sometimes even healer. His candle flickers as he closes his book and mutters a prayer for the village's safety. The reeve steps out of his cottage to take a final walk across the green. He scans the boundaries for anything amiss, an unlatched gate, an unattended tool, a suspicious figure. His responsibility does not end with daylight. Ensuring security preserves harmony in the community. Satisfied that all is in order, he heads back inside, his breath misting in the cool air. As night deepens further, wind rustles through the thatch rooftops and whistles softly under wooden doors. It carries with it the scent of damp soil and distant pine. A few stars appear overhead, though clouds obscure many. On moonless nights like this, the world outside the firelit windows becomes a void. Paths vanish, trees become looming shapes. The forest is a wall of breathing darkness. Inside the cottages, thoughts turn toward sleep. Parents guide younger children to their shared straw beds, smoothing blankets over them. A mother hums a soft lullaby, her voice blending with the crackle of the fire. A teenager finishes repairing a tear in his sleeve and sets the garment aside. The father banks the fire, pushing ash over the glowing embers to preserve them until morning. Conversations fade into low murmurs. One by one, the cottages fall into near silence. A baby whimpers briefly, then settles. A man coughs twice before sleep takes him. A dog shifts outside, its nails clicking softly on the packed earth. Beyond these small sounds, quiet reigns. This is the moment when the medieval night truly takes hold. It is not fearful, but solemn, a reminder of the world's vastness and the village's small place within it. The villagers rely on one another, on their fires, on their routines, and on their faith to navigate the darkness. The world outside the village continues moving, owls hunting silently, foxes creeping near hedgerows, wind brushing through the treetops. But the village draws inward, wrapped in firelight and family, tucked beneath blankets, bound together by shared experience and centuries-old tradition. Sleep comes slowly but steadily. Breathing synchronizes, limbs relax. Dreams begin their work, filling the mind with fragments of memory, stories, fears, and hopes. The medieval village rests for now, but dawn will come soon, and with it another day of work, another cycle of life. The night passes slowly and steadily, and by the time dawn begins to stir on the horizon, the medieval village lies wrapped in a hush so complete that it feels almost sacred. For a brief moment, just before light breaks, the world holds its breath. It is the quietest time of the entire day. No voices, no tools, no footsteps, only the faint rustle of wind and the soft rhythmic breathing of families asleep inside their cottages. But as the faintest hint of silver touches the sky, the stillness begins to unravel. A rooster crows, a dog yawns and stretches, a horse whinnies softly in its stall. These early sounds weave through the dark like threads pulling the village back toward life. Inside a cottage, a mother wakes first. Her body rises before her mind fully does, guided by instinct and years of routine. The fire has nearly died, reduced to a dim scatter of embers buried beneath ash. She kneels, breathes gently across the coals, and watches as a faint glow begins to pulse back to life. She adds a few twigs, shielding them with her hands to help them catch. Soon the fire crackles again, pushing warmth into the chilly morning air. The father stirs next. His joints ache from yesterday's labor, but he rises without complaint. There is work to be done, always work. He checks the children, adjusting blankets where necessary. The youngest sleeps soundly, one small hand clinging to the corner of a woolen cloth. The father kisses the child's forehead before standing. Breakfast is simple, predictable, and comforting. Reheated pottage, a piece of coarse bread, a sip of ale. The family eats quietly, still waking, still easing into the day. Outside, pale morning light finally breaks over the horizon, revealing the outlines of the village, the thatched roofs, the crooked lane, the fences patched and repatched across generations. Soon the village stirs entirely. Doors open, boots step onto damp earth. A cow moos impatiently. Children rub sleep from their eyes as they're guided toward their tasks. Smoke rises from chimneys, twisting upward in slender spirals. Another medieval day has begun. The men gather their tools. Some head directly to the fields, others first check the livestock pens. In the open fields, the land waits patiently, shaped by yesterday's work and awaiting today's hand. The plows resume their steady movement, carving fresh lines into the earth. Birds swoop behind them, eager for morning's bounty of insects. The village falls into rhythm once more, a perfect repetition, yet entirely new. The work continues through the morning, familiar and relentless. Repairs that were put off yesterday must be completed today. A fence that sagged needs tightening. A patch of tough soil requires more turning. A pig that escaped its pen last night must be lured home with scraps. The days blur together, but each one contributes to the village's survival. By midday, the sun shines warmly on the thatched rooftops. Families pause for a meal, sharing stories about the morning's successes and small frustrations. A father recalls how his ox refused to move for nearly a full minute, causing laughter around the fire. A mother shares that she finally succeeded in correcting a dye that turned out too pale. Children show off small treasures found in the grass, a smooth stone, a colorful feather, a strangely shaped twig. This midday pause is not indulgence, it is necessity. Rest makes the afternoon possible. The traveler who arrived earlier in the week prepares to move on. Villagers gather around him, offering bread, advice, and final questions. He shares news from distant towns, a rumor about rising taxes, a tale of a noble feud turning violent, a strange story about a monk who claims to have seen a sign in the heavens. The villagers absorb each word, unsure which pieces are truth, which are exaggeration, and which will transform into stories retold beside future fires. By afternoon, the village hums with renewed purpose. Women weave or spin beneath the shade of their cottage walls. The smithy's forge roars back to life, sending sparks upward. The carpenter fits a final peg into place on a sturdy barn door. Children, tired from chores and play, rest in patches of sun-warmed grass, watching dragonflies dance above the green. As the sun lowers once again, evening approaches, carrying with it a sense of completion. Livestock return to their pens. Tools are stored. Water is fetched. Fires are stoked for dinner. The smells of pottage, bread, and herbs drift across the village. Families gather, tired but together, and as night deepens, stories return. Tales of saints, heroes, spirits, and ancestors weave through cottage walls, comforting and cautioning all who listen. The firelight flickers across faces that have known hardship, love, fear, and hope. The villagers draw close to one another, finding warmth not only in the hearth, but in the shared experience of survival. This cycle repeats endlessly, day into night, night into day, season into season. There is no need for clocks, no strict schedule dictated by anything other than the sun, the soil, and the communal effort to live another day. A medieval villager's life is not defined by grand events, but by countless small, steady tasks that build the foundation of existence. Work is not separate from life. It is life. Family, faith, seasons, community, and land weave together into an inseparable tapestry. And amid all this labor, there is beauty. The golden glow of a sunrise over the fields, the laughter of children playing barefoot for the first time each spring, the soft murmurs of neighbors sharing bread, the rhythm of a shared life repeated for generations, forming the backbone of English history. As the final embers of the day burn low and families settle into sleep, the village rests once more, beneath the star-studded sky. The wind whispers through the thatch. Animals quiet themselves. The last voices fall silent. This is the world of the medieval villager, humble, relentless, communal, sacred in its simplicity. And tomorrow, the cycle will begin again, unchanged, yet always renewing.